Hey there everyone, as the title can suggest, you may be wondering, is this a hoax? But no, it's not a hoax. I have finally broken through to the mainstream media today, that being the 16th of May 2012, on the Jeremy Vine show on BBC Radio 2, of all places. Essentially what was being discussed today was Section 5 of the Public Order Act 1986, and certain proposals that it should be repealed. And I felt duty bound to, email into the show and ring into the show to put myself into the arena, as it were, to discuss my experiences of this issue. I was contacted back. They asked me, do you want to appear on the show? I was like, yes, absolutely, I'd love to. And I was brought on. So what follows in a minute is the complete audio from when I was introduced by Jeremy up until when Jeremy had said goodbye and thank you to me. And basically after this I will provide my analysis of what happened. So here's the audio.
Adam is in Cranbrook in Kent, and Adam, you go out as an activist and campaign on a loudspeaker, I gather?
Yes, that's correct, Jeremy, and thank you very much for having me on.
Not at all. What are you campaigning for or against?
Well, really, I wouldn't say I'm campaigning per se. I'm really just an individual speaking out freely in a public area on a megaphone. And essentially, my message is to sort of raise love and lower fear, and just enable people to realise that, they're wonderful and beautiful just as they are. They don't necessarily need money or material possessions to make them happy, and,
right.
That life, shouldn't be as bad as it should be.
Well, I can't imagine anyone disagreeing with anything you've said so far. So what's the problem been?
Well, essentially by doing that, it's questioning the current status quo, and the police don't tend to like that whatsoever. So they try and get me to shut up.
Are they trying to get you to shut up because of your message or because you're just very, very loud?
Well, it's not because I'm very, very loud. I mean, a megaphone wouldn't actually be allowed to be, by current regulations, to be manufactured to break any kind of any parts of the Noise Act. But also the fact that because what I'm saying isn't very good for the current system to keep going, because I want people to be happy with who they are, to seek healthier ways of life, and that's obviously not good for business, is it?
Well, that's deemed as the breach of the peace.
That is a breach of the peace, isn't it?
Look, we all want love. The police want love.
Hang on, Adam.
Hang on. The police want love. We would love the public to like us. We've been so disenfranchised with them, we feel very unloved. So love is the one that we want. However, if you continue to shout on your megaphone, it will be tolerated for a certain period of time. After a while, it will no doubt upset people. When it upsets people, they will call the police. When we're called, we have to make a decision, and we'll say, look, 10 minutes is more than enough. If you can continue to do that, the public are going to be upset, and they're going to be alarmed about this, and we're going to have to take some action. We don't want to arrest you, but if you continue, we'll have no option.
Peter
the choice is yours.
But Norman, I don't think there's any right to not be distressed, offended, or upset. Some of the most important ideas in history, such as those of Galileo Galilei and Charles Darwin, caused great offence and distress in their time. I think we have to affirm that in a free and democratic society, people are allowed to express their opinions, even if they are unpalatable and offensive.
It may be just that he was too loud on his megaphone, I don't know. Adam, thank you very much.
Okay, there we have it. Well, that is me finally breaking through to the mainstream media. Now, as you can tell from that, I wasn't probably sounding explicitly confident, seeing as this was my very, very first appearance on the mainstream radio. Granted, I've appeared on Brighton and Hove Community Radio twice before, but that's not entirely mainstream. BBC Radio 2, that is very mainstream. So I was running on adrenaline, my heart was pounding, I was slightly out of breath. I was trying to keep on top of everything, and as you can tell, I didn't exactly hold my ground extremely well, but I'd like to think that I at least tried. But as for how I thought the the interview went in a way. I think it went okay, even though I was only really given two main opportunities to speak. But there was a police officer on the line who was basically essentially having a go at me. Now, to address the first point that you made, of course, yes, police are human beings as well, so they need love as well. Yep, that's fair enough. However, there's one public statement that I would like to make for anyone listening who may be in the police service or know anyone in the police service. Here is the best route for the police as a whole to feel more loved by the public. Don't push them around and do not try to take their civil liberties away from them. That is the best means for the public to be able to love the police. Okay? And the second point that you made, shouting on my megaphone. Now, this is one thing that I encounter from time to time by people who don't necessarily either get or appreciate the things that I do on the megaphone. First of all, if you have a megaphone, you do not need to shout. The megaphone is an amplification device. Therefore, you don't need to shout. You can whisper through a megaphone, and would that still be considered shouting just because it's loud? Now, I can understand if it's a volume issue that he's talking about. However, as Charlie Veitch once said to a guy who was trying to shut him up, he said, well, this is no louder than a bus. And as I said, a megaphone would not be manufactured to cause a breach of the Noise Act or any such legislation. A megaphone is merely an amplification device, and just because I am speaking through a megaphone, just because it's loud, that doesn't mean I'm shouting. Okay? There is a great difference between someone speaking through an amplification device, such as a megaphone, and someone actually shouting. And someone who is actually shouting, to be able to be as loud as a megaphone, you would have to shout really loud. And the very act of shouting, I think that would be causing harassment, alarm and distress. A breach of Section 5 of the Public Order Act 1986. Because when you have to shout that loud, the actual vocal conveyance that you're putting through, there's a certain amount of aggression that gets carried through there, whether it's intended or not. The act of shouting is an act of aggression in a way, and it a lot of the time it's set. You can't avoid. Or either that, or it's very, very, very difficult to avoid sounding angry or pushy or something when you are shouting. Okay, so in a sense, this police officer has used some very coloured language and very negative, deliberately negative language when speaking about my activities on a megaphone. He says, "Oh, you shouting on your megaphone?" No, I don't shout on a megaphone. I just speak through a megaphone. Every now and then my voice may go up, or slightly louder for emphasis, but my voice never goes above the the average decibel level for normal speech. Okay? That is why I have a megaphone. So I don't need to raise my voice louder than just normal speaking volumes. Okay, so the very idea of him saying, "Oh, you shouting on your megaphone," immediately puts a very negative, tarnish on the whole thing. And I really wish that I had the opportunity to correct him on this and a few other things that he said during the interview. But when he said that even though what I'm doing is giving out a message of love, compassion, respect, honesty, and questioning things, he would deem that as a breach of the peace. A breach of the peace? How does giving out a message of, love and compassion constitute a breach of the peace? Essentially, when the breach of the peace was first drafted into law, it was really the foundation for the police force itself, to protect the king from being overthrown by the people. So essentially, a force of police were created, and it was really to protect the king's peace. If the king feared for his own personal safety as the monarch on the throne, being overthrown by the public or killed or harmed in any way, that formed the basis of breach of the peace. Now, the breach of the peace is defined as when you cause any person to fear for their own personal safety, or if you're actively and knowingly inciting violence or riots. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a breach of the peace. Even if you are speaking publicly in a public area on a megaphone, that does not constitute a breach of the peace. A breach of the peace is not, breaking the silence. That's not a breach of the peace. Making noise does not constitute a breach of the peace. And, even though I respect this police officer as a human being, I am formally saying that I'm sorry, but you either don't know the true definition of a breach of the peace, or you have forgotten it. Because what I do, and what I explained that I do on Radio 2 earlier today, does not constitute a breach of the peace. Now, the other thing, when he started talking at me, essentially I felt like I was back in the high street again with a cop right in front of me trying to harass me. Now, maybe this is part of his training in dealing with people like me, basically just acting as a scornful parent. Now, for those of you who are familiar with the principles of transactional analysis, will be aware that the police, a lot of the time, they act as the critical parent and expect you to act as the rebellious child. Now, basically, that is how this guy was talking to me. He was saying, "Oh no, the public won't like it. 10 minutes is long. 10 minutes." For those of you who are familiar with what I do, you guys know that I do this stuff for hours on end, or until when my megaphone batteries run out. Okay, if 10 minutes. 10 minutes of free speech? How is that free speech anyway? How can you say, you can have 10 minutes to say what you want? Ladies and gentlemen, that is not freedom of speech. Okay? But yeah, he was essentially saying that whatever I may be saying, even if I'm picking out a person at random and saying to them directly, "You, sir," or "You, madam, you are a beautiful human being." Saying that so that is a breach of the peace. Now, keep in mind that one of the things that I tried to say when, we started talking over each other, and I can understand Jeremy needed to step in and say, to tell me to hold on, was one of the things I was trying to say is that breach of the peace is not a part of the Public Order Act 1986. It isn't included in Section 4, 4A, or Section 5. A breach of the peace exists in common law. That is one of the things that I was trying to say, and I realised that now I was just talking over. I thought that we would have had a bit more time to discuss this, but obviously it was in a very confined time frame. But yeah, he was basically just treating me like a like a rebellious child, and we don't want to arrest you, but we will be forced to. Well, for what? What law am I breaking? I mean, I know we're talking about Section 5 of the Public Order Act in this radio program, but even so, that isn't even a law. So I'm not even breaking any law. I mean, granted, I could have actually, if my mind was working better and quicker at that point in time, I probably would have put in a few more wiser words. Maybe tried to disagree with earlier when he tried to say that's a breach of the peace. I should have put in. I'm afraid to say no. Breach of the peace is when you cause someone to fear for their own personal safety. Breach of the peace is not making noise. I should have said that, but first time on the mainstream media. So obviously, please forgive me, guys. I didn't exactly know what I needed to be said, but yeah. And the point that was raised after mine, that the suppositions that were made by Charles Darwin and Galileo Galilei, he is absolutely right, spot on, that the suppositions made by these people were extremely offensive at the times when they were positive. Okay, extremely offensive. In fact, Galileo Galilei was threatened with imprisonment and torture if he didn't recant his theory. So, don't you think that we have a similar sort of position when we have activists who are respectfully questioning the status quo and respectfully, encouraging other people to do the same? And then we have cops coming up to them and threatening them with a breach of the peace or a breach of Section 4, 4A or 5 of the Public Order Act 1986. Don't you think that's a parallel situation here? But that's one thing to think about, guys. I just thought I'd put my 2 cents in. But I'd like to thank Jeremy Vine and all the staff working at the studios of BBC Radio 2 for allowing me to come on. I really appreciate it, guys, and I hope that because I'd like to come on, in the future to discuss things. If there's something that I can, give a positive and constructive contribution for, I'd love to be able to be allowed to come on in the future. But also, thank you. Also, everyone listening for watching this video. I very much appreciate all of your help, and by all means, don't believe a single word I'm saying. Use my words to inspire you to go out, do some research, do your own thinking, and arrive at your own decisions. But that's it for me. Take care, guys, and have wonderful lives. Thank you. Bye-bye.